countrylife.com. I'll see you in the country.
Living the country life. Ideas and inspiration for your place in the country. You can find more information on today's topic, share your tips, and post photos by visiting us online at livingthecountrylife.com.
Today's Daily Encouragement by William the Encourager, sponsored by Ted Russell Nissan, home of the lifetime warranty on Kingston Pike.
Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Come on, you know the drill now. Father, we thank you. Lord, we wake up with thoughts of gratefulness and thanksgiving on our minds because, Lord, you kept us all night and you woke us up this morning clothed and in our right minds. And we just want to say thank you, and we want to invite you in today, Lord, and come into our lives, Lord, and help us to be the servants and the men, the women, the sons of God that you've called us to be. Lord, we thank you and we praise you. It is in Jesus' name that we pray. My brothers and sisters, again, this is William the Encourager coming at you, and I'm going to keep beating this message into you because you need to know who you are, what you are capable of. Again, I'm going to ask this question every day this week. What is the richest place in the world? Is it the oil fields of Saudi Arabia? Is it the diamond mines of South Africa? Is it the uranium mines of Russia? The richest place in the world is the cemetery. Why? Well, buried there is a wealth of unused potential. Plans that never made it to the table, ideas that were never realized, songs that were never written, books that were never published, dreams that never came to pass. My brothers and sisters, don't take your potential to the grave. Don't take it to the grave. Norman Cousin said the tragedy of life is not death, but what we let die inside of us while we yet live. You've got so much inside of you that God has given you, grasshopper. So live and do the things that God has called you to do, because he has put something in you that is not just for you. He has put something inside of you that is for the world. And if you would allow God to show you and teach you what to do, how to do it, and when to use it, you can be an influence in this world, and you can also be an influence in your family. Because remember, God has given you great and precious promises, and if you will allow him, he will bring it to pass. Isaiah 26:19 says, thy dead men shall live, together with my dead body shall they rise. Awake and sing, ye that dwell in dust, for thy dew is as the dew of herbs, and the earth shall cast out the dead. Brothers and sisters, the enemy wants to keep you down and out, and he wants to pronounce death, hell, and the grave upon you. But our Lord and Savior is saying, rise, get up out of that grave, take off your old grave clothes and put on a new robe and live and begin to walk in the power that the Lord has given us. Remember, there are promises. God has given you promises that you, yes, you can begin to claim today, because nothing shall be impossible. And you know, you got to realize sometime what David said in Psalms 23:4. He said, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Sometimes we have to realize that, you know what, we are not walking alone. We have the Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, walking with us. W.B.D. Du Bois once said, the most important thing to remember is this: to be ready at any moment to give up what you are for what you can become. You can become everything that God ordained you to be, my brothers and sisters. But it's one thing to remember: there's a way out of your mess, and that's JESUS.
Where can you buy a brand new Nissan with a lifetime warranty? Kingston Pike. Hey, folks, Gerald Anderson with Ted Russell Nissan. You heard it right. Every new Ted Russell Nissan comes with a lifetime warranty, and that's a long, long time. Ted Russell Nissan on Kingston Pike.
Good morning and welcome to AM 1380 WYSH and Ask Your Neighbor. Ask Your Neighbor can also be heard and seen on our website, WYSHradio.com. And if you are in Anderson, Roane, or Morgan County and have Comcast cable, you can watch Ask Your Neighbor on BBB TV Channel 12. Ask Your Neighbor is the program where you call in and do just that. Ask Your Neighbor. Do you have a comment? Do you have a problem? Or do you have a question? Then call in and ask your neighbor. 865-457-1380 or toll free at 877-711-4005. And for those of you that might be listening or watching on the internet, you can email from our website, WYSHradio.com. Just click on the Contact Us button and email your questions. Now sit back and listen as listeners throughout East Tennessee and the entire world answer your questions on Ask Your Neighbor on BBB TV 12 and AM 1380 WYSH.
Well, it is the first Tuesday of the month of March. That means Dr. David Ayers comes in for the Ask the Doctor edition of Ask Your Neighbor. Good morning, Doc.
Morning.
How are you today?
A little bit tired. We're back to trying to move back down here again. The farm will go up for sale again, I think probably in a couple weeks. And, you try to get the farm ready for people to come through and see it and stage it and all that other stuff. So, or to thin out some of our stuff so make it more appealing to the masses.
You always end up with a lot more than you think you had when you start to move, don't you?
Oh, I've got a lot. I mean, multiple storage units down here because I didn't plan on being up there that long. I built two of those actually.
Oh, wow.
In my yard. I have the shop down in West Virginia.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Bookshelf.
Yeah.
That's pretty nice.
Make a fireplace symmetrical. Anyway, so we brought some stuff down here yesterday, and so if you're the praying sort, you can pray for me and my future. We had a little hiccup in the road tomorrow we got to go to. Nothing health or anything like that, so we're fine, but just stuff. So if you could remember us in your prayers, we'd sure appreciate it. I think that's something else to.
You had your farm sold and it fell through, didn't it? The guy backed out?
At the very end. I turned and showed him everything, I felt like Hezekiah, when Hezekiah showed the Assyrian king all the riches and everything. Next thing you know,
showed him all the good stuff.
Yeah. And he came and took it. But he still lives over the hill. We will see. I hope to sell it for a good price. It'd be a good new start down here.
Good.
I'd come live in my little 2-bedroom apartment here while I try to find a place. I was listening to a show coming up and mentioned NAD, I think, at the weight loss place. So we can talk about that. But please call. I mean, honestly, your questions are much better than anything I've dreamed up. And it always makes for a better show if you have questions.
Sure.
I do want to address that one thing from last time, though. So we had a call come in saying that you could refuse a smart meter in the state of Tennessee. And she was nice. She gave the bill number and all that. But when I went and researched it, it appeared that bill died in committee and never got out of committee.
Ah.
So maybe there is no law in Tennessee protecting you for that, but it would be a good law. It really would. They snuck up to my farm while I was away for a few hours and stuck it on my house up there. And I was prepared just to go solar panels and bypass the whole road. But if I'm going to move, it seemed hardly worth it. But
yeah,
it shows you what happens is the first few weeks after I got it, I got a letter in the mail saying, this is a notification, your bill's going to be a little higher this month, So that thing's monitoring you day by day by day, and it's comparing you to what you were in the past, what your bills were, and it knows a lot about you. It definitely knows when you're home and when you're not home. Definitely knows when you turn your dryer on, you turn your dishwasher on. It knows when you go to bed. knows a lot of stuff about you, and that's spying basically. That's wiretapping, and nobody's stopping it. Nobody seems to care. NAD, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, is the chemical they were talking about, and it's one of those things I don't think we have a ton of info about long-term effects and all that. I don't think it's harmful. It might be harmful for you for one thing. So if you want to make a note of who might not want to use it, it would be if you've had cancer or you're really prone to cancer, because it seems to maybe increase the chance of you getting your cancer back in some small part of the population. So as long as you hadn't had cancer, it seems like it might be a thing to do. It helps with metabolism, helps decrease inflammation, apparently. And maybe all that together adds up to decrease in aging. So probably okay. It does come in an injection form. I wouldn't be too much a fan of that. I think the pills would be better. But when you get the pills, you're not actually getting that substance. Like a lot of medicines, you're getting a pro thing. So you're getting the forerunner of that. And then when you take it, your body metabolizes it into that.
Gotcha.
So the actual substance you're going to take is probably not NAD. It's a forerunner of NAD. And your body will turn it into NAD once you swallow it. And I don't see any harm in taking it. You can just try it and see how you do with it. So if any questions about that, what I would say.
Okay.
We talk about radiation sometimes. What's an acceptable amount of radiation? Well, 0. But you're not going to get 0.
Sure.
Because the sun has a lot. The sun has gamma rays and all these things coming through. And that's why the atmosphere around the Earth is so important. It filters a lot of that stuff out. That's what makes the northern lights, or aurora borealis, or aurora australis if you live down south, glow in the sky. That's all those ions hitting the upper atmosphere and making it light up. So our atmosphere protects us. Interestingly, 50 years ago, there were regulators who ignored a report linking wireless radiation to 23 chronic diseases. And so on February 6th of this year, the United States Navy Medical Research Institute issued a report from 1971 that issued a report on it reviewed 2,311 scientific studies on the biological health effects of electromagnetic radiation, and their conclusion was the government has failed to protect the public from known harms. You tie that with the NIH redacts, so the National Institutes of Health, redacted 2,500 pages of records on wireless radiation studies. So they were doing studies on how wireless radiation affected human beings, and then when it came to giving the report, they took 2,500 pages out. And the National Toxicology Program, who was sort of running the report, they shut down the whole research on how wireless radiation affects human health. This is from the Defender, a news source. They found clear evidence that wireless radiation was linked to cancer and damage to the DNA. So now people are trying to get a hold of those 2,500 pages and at least trying to get the study started back up. With 5G, they said it penetrated your skin to a few millimeters. If they go to 6G or higher, it's probably going to be more aggressive. But we are surrounded by a ton of radiation. I mean, really.
Hang on, we got a call here, I believe. Good morning and welcome to Ask Your Neighbor. Do you have a comment or question for Dr. Ayers this morning?
Question for the doctor, if I could.
You can go right ahead.
I've got COPD, and lately my blood pressure's been spiking up. Could the nebulizers and the puffers and all that be causing it?
It can. Depending on what's in the nebulizer. Atrovent probably wouldn't, ipratropium bromide, but the albuterol, it's like epinephrine. So it
is the ipratropium, yeah.
So the ipratropium probably wouldn't elevate your blood pressure. Albuterol.
Okay, that's what I'm on.
Yeah, albuterol can. So sometimes they're mixed together in an inhaler, both drugs together.
Okay, well, so maybe the rescue inhaler is not causing it.
Right, it could do that. But, just because you have COPD doesn't mean you can't get high blood pressure issues. It's common.
I see.
So
okay, I was just wondering. I'm trying to figure out that change the medicine, and so far it seems like anytime I do any kind of activity, it spikes up.
How high are we talking about?
Well, they give me another pill to take in case it got above, the limits there. Give me some clonidine. So I had to take one yesterday. So it got up to 170 over 100 or something like that.
Yeah, it's getting up there. I mean, short term, it's not going to be a problem. Long term, it could be an issue. Just as
it comes back down. Just sometimes it just moves up there.
Yeah. So make you a little diary and see.
Keep an eye on it. So.
Might keep a diary and see if you can tie a relationship between when it goes up and what you've been doing. What you've been eating.
He's got me charting it here.
Good.
Swap the medicine around, so I'm charting it till I go back in a couple of weeks. So I'll just have to wait and see, I guess. But I appreciate your time.
Sure.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I like clonidine. It's an old medication. It gets a little bit of a dry mouth, a little bit of sedation, but it's fast and it's been out there long enough. It's not going to surprise you with anything unusual. And you can use it in kidney disease, and so a lot of nephrologists use it, but it's an old drug. Longer than when I was in medicine. Okay, so radiation is an issue. You may, if you want to try to do something to benefit your health, when you go to bed at night, you can turn off your Wi-Fi. Remember how if you got a smart meter, you've got Wi-Fi banging through your house anyway, and of course if you're in a 5G area, you're going to have that banging through, but at least you can minimize the amount of radiation. Don't sleep with your phone by your bed. I mean, most people spend their entire day with their phone within 3 feet of their body. And if you think about now this is just me pondering outside the box here, so don't put too much stock in this, but esophageal cancer is up 700% in the United States. Colon and rectal cancer is way up in young people. I mean, that's an old person's disease. I mean, at least 40, 50, 60, 70. It's not a 20-year-old disease. So, and you think about where people keep their phones. A lot of people keep in their back pocket. So they got radiation to your caboose all day long. A lot of people keep them in their breast pocket, or close to their esophagus. So I don't know what's part of the cause, but that it's helping. I mean, there's definitely a relationship between using your phone by your head and glioblastoma multiforme. So if you talk on your phone, as much as you can, use the speaker and keep it away from your face and your head. There's quite a bit of radiation. You can buy a little radiation meter, not too expensive. It usually has like RFID or not RFI, radio frequency, and then just general electromagnetic radiation, 2 or 3 numbers on there. You can see how much exposure you're getting. It might terrify you. I don't know if you want to do that or not. Mm-hmm. But anything electronic is going to put out some radiation, even your hearing aids. And definitely those Apple things you stick in your ear, those little white ones, that people use all the time when they're online. Quite a bit of radiation to your brain when they do it. So minimizing radiation is good. There's some artist, singer, I think, MIA, I don't know who that is, but she's got a whole line of clothes. It's like a, I don't know, it's like wearing screen wire, but it's thin, it's supple. Mm-hmm. It's like wearing your own little shield, yeah. So
interesting.
I mean, kind of have to wear clothes like that. And they're still really getting back to wearing a tinfoil hat on your head. It's not a bad idea, actually. At least protect your brain. Number 2 on the list today, let's see. In NIH, another study from the National Institutes of Health showed that 42% were concerned that we're getting too many immunizations in the children, and they're afraid that it would weaken the immune system of the children. 32% thought that the immunizations did more harm than good. 28% said they didn't think they strengthened the immune system. So that's getting to be a problem for the system, as it were, because people are not getting the number of shots. Mm-hmm. So some states, to get around that, are repealing the exemptions It's funny because West Virginia just got the exemption for religious. They never had one before for school. You now take a religious exemption for the shots in West Virginia. But some kind of states are trying to get rid of the exemptions. Regardless of what you think about the shots, if your kid's going to go to school, they're going to have the shots. They're going to take away your ability to say no. But according to the Children's Health Defense and others, the health of unvaccinated children is far superior to those who are vaccinated. That's just a fact. That's not even a contestable fact. The CDC is pushing milestones back further. So it was 3 months old, your child should be able to roll over. Now they push it back to 5 months. It's like we're going backwards. So now you have to be 5 months old and your child not turning over before it's odd. I mean, it used to be 3 months. And it used to be 6 months for setting up. I don't know what even that is now. So the unvaccinated are reaching milestones quicker and easier than the vaccinated counterparts. That is fact. That is fact. And, you know, it's not like we can say, oh, we've had these immunizations here in the United States, so we have healthier children. We have like the worst health in children, maybe almost of any of the developed countries around the world. In spite of all these shots, and there's like 92 shots. If you took every one that they wanted you to take, from birth to age 18, it'd be like 92 shots. And some people say there's not 92 shots. There are 92 things they inject in you. Because if you get a DPT, you get 3 things on that one, okay?
Yeah.
You have to add all those up separately. But it's about 92 of them. Yeah, I started thinking, did God make such a defective product that we need 92 shots before age 18? Mm-hmm. I think that's just ridiculous. And I think more people are starting to question it. So I'm not totally against vaccination, but we need to stop, and I've said before, we need a moratorium, and let's look at these and see. Now, some people got all over Robert Kennedy about this measles thing, so let's talk about measles since it's been in the news.
Yeah.
Nobody really knows what happened to that child in Texas, okay? That's the first thing. There's not enough data to say that child died of measles. And there's a question whether they vaccinated him for measles in the midst of being sick with something else. And it just seems too curious to me that we get this new guy in Health and Human Services who's marginal at best on vaccination, and then we get outbreaks of measles all over the United States immediately. The timing just seems suspect at best. The chance of dying from measles is about 1 in 500,000, okay? So 2 out of 1 million kids who get measles will die from measles. And maybe not even that, because we know if you give the child vitamin A, it almost stops all the serious side effects of it.
Yeah.
And that's been known for quite some time. And a lot of kids are low in vitamin A. You know, they're fat-soluble vitamins and they're water-soluble vitamins, meaning that if you had oil, the fat-soluble vitamins would dissolve in the oil, but they wouldn't dissolve in water. And if they're water-soluble vitamins, they would dissolve in water, and they wouldn't dissolve in oil. So the 4 fat-soluble vitamins are A, D, E, and K. And one thing doctors are taught in school is that be terrified of those 4 because you can get toxic levels in your body. I've never heard anybody really doing that unless they just overdosed on some vitamin. Or they said they polar bear liver. They got like vitamin A toxic levels. But what happens is now we got low levels pretty much. People are told not to get out in the sun. It's going to give you cancer and it's going to hurt you. And so now everybody's vitamin D level is low, or vitamin A's level is low, and the E and the K were just low. But people are terrified of those vitamins. And because of that, when a child would get measles, his vitamin A is low, and then he gets a poor outcome. So you can treat a child acutely with given vitamin A in the midst of a case of measles, and it tends to avert all the bad outcomes. I'm not saying no child will ever die, but let's say the evidence is clear. Your chances are better with the measles than with the measles shot, because the side effects of the measles shot is definitely higher above 1 out of 500,000. It's definitely well above that. And everybody used to get measles. Nobody got freaked out about it.
Mm-hmm. I had it.
Measles, mumps, rubella, they had all those.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're called diseases instead of infections. These are diseases. We need to stop it. But actually, most of the diseases are coming from the medicines we treat people with. And I'm not against medicine. Obviously, I did 30 years as a doctor, but I haven't stepped back from it. It seems like we're overdoing. I mean, I have a friend of mine in West Virginia who is a pediatrician, and he just says that shots need to be mandated. Everybody's got to get them. You know, it'd be like going to jail or Child Protective Services coming to your house. And we don't want that, especially when the outcomes of the unvaccinated kids are better than the vaccinated kids. But honestly, what would a pediatrician do if he didn't have shots?
Yeah, really.
I mean, think about. If you want to think about Iraq, it's pediatrics. I'll get people hate me, but they do well child checks. The chance of a child, the chance you finding something on a well child check is got to be approaching zero. You know, you bring your child in for its 2-week checkups, 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 9 months. You know what all those visits are around? Shots. They're all circled around when the doses are given, because you give DPT at 2, 4, 6, and you check the iron at 9 months, and then at 12, 15, you give MMR and Hibs, and, you know, it's all the visits are around getting injections. And I don't know. I think you don't have to go back to seeing the doctor when you're sick.
Yeah.
And maybe not so much when you're well. Let's see. Number 3. Hepatitis B vaccine. There's going to be a lot about vaccines today because with RFK Jr. getting into the White House kind of thing. So hepatitis B vaccine is interesting because your child gets it before they go home. It's actually the first shot, really, immunization that they give. And now hepatitis B is a blood-borne pathogen, meaning that you have to inject yourself with a needle or have sex. So that's the only way you really can get it. Now, if the mother had hepatitis B, you might have a argument for giving it to the child, okay? But short of that, let's say, and they estimate that the effectiveness of the vaccine lasts about 12 years. So with kid's 12, he's still not sexually active, and surely he's not injecting stuff in his arm at 12. So why are they giving this shot? I don't think anybody knows. Before they even get out of the hospital, the child's vaccinated. The Vaccine Compensation Fund, which hardly ever pays out money to anybody in the United States, it's so protected. But they do note that death from encephalitis, which is inflammation of your brain, or encephalopathy, which is disease of the brain, on their payouts. They do pay out for that from the hepatitis B shot. So they took a normal, healthy baby, gave it a shot, and it died from encephalitis. I mean, that has to be one of the most tragic things I ever heard. It just makes no sense to give it at birth, and yet it's like standard care. And vaccinations has really become like a cult to physicians. You start telling them to rethink that or maybe hold off on that, and they just really take offense to it. So go back to the measles outbreak. It just seems very political. So I think until you get more information, I wouldn't lose sleep over it. Let's face it, back in the 60s, if there was an outbreak of measles somewhere, people would yawn and go on with their daily life. But now it's headline news. And especially with a child dying, which is horrible. Just the loss of life, loss of potential, the tragedy of the family is drastic, but we don't know enough about what happened to that child. It'd be very unlikely to die of measles. There was a talk, I think, I didn't say it, but on Joe Rogan's program, he had Elon Musk on. They were talking about genetically modified superviruses. And we're making those all around the world. We're taking viruses and making them superviruses. And I guess the thinking is
that we're trying to figure out a way to combat them? That's crazy.
Well, what they're thinking is, what if China came up with one of these superviruses? We have a chance of using something to stop it. But that's just insane. Because you're going to make a horrible pathogen that if it gets out, we see all what happens with COVID, but they're not making cures for these things there. And America, last I looked, they have about 300 biolabs like that around the world, We have them all over the world. I had them in Ukraine, which is part of the problem, I think, with Russia invading Ukraine. We were upwind from them. And they're making horrible, horrible disease-producing organisms in these places. And their theory is that just per chance, in nature, it makes that very same mutation, which has got to be about statistically zero that's going to happen, that they'll be ready for it when it gets here. And we just got to stop that. They're really looking for something they can use in a war. That's the real truth of it. They want to have some bioweapon, which I think they've been outlawed, but it doesn't seem like it stops anybody. And we have, like the Galveston lab here in Texas, they have a working contract with the Wuhan lab, the famous Wuhan lab of virology, Wuhan Institute of Virology, and where they work together on making these things. And I think the contract is set up so that the Galveston lab has to destroy any data or anything. They can't keep it. You can't even keep a copy of it. It all has to go back to Wuhan. And I just think it's just wrong. It's just wrong. I think everybody knows it's wrong, and nobody's willing to stop it. There has to be some kind of financial incentive in there somewhere. Utah became the first state to end water fluoridation for all residents. So that's been bandied around here a while. And the reason it got bandied around is because we know for a fact that children who drink water with fluoride in it are dumber than kids who don't. We've known that for a long time. It does affect the brain. It is a neurotoxin, and it slows your kid down. And especially if you're a pregnant woman and you're drinking fluoridated water, and it's going to the baby. So even though the baby's brain's developing, now, as older adults whose brain's more stable, it's probably not as big a deal, but it does cause other ill effects. It can cause your bones to get fluorosis and things, but it's hard to get people to turn their back on that because it's been beating their heads. It's such a good thing. You know, it went down in one of the greatest scientific things of the 20th century. It's in the list, fluoridation of water, but it's not good. It's not good for kids' brains. So don't let your kids drink tap water. I hate to say that. You need to find water that's not fluoridated, or have some kind of filter that can take it out. For Utah, first state, taking out the water for everybody. Let's talk about vaccines for just a second so we know what we're talking about. The theory behind a vaccine is that you give the body a part of what the infection disease organism is, or you give it a killed version of it. So let's say in flu, you give a killed version of the flu virus. You made the flu virus, you grew it in a thing, and then you gave it something and killed it. So you just have these little bodies, the bodies of it there, as it were. You take the bodies of it, they shoot it in your arm, and so what your body does is it recognizes that as a foreign thing, and it makes antibodies to it. So if you come across it again, it's going to be ready to kill it. But the trouble is, it's a respiratory virus, and the antibodies are in your blood, and so it's not all that helpful. In fact, the flu shot, for as much as I touted it on this show for the first 10 years, it really doesn't work hardly. I mean, 25%, maybe 35% on a good year, if it works at all. Okay. So this year they stopped looking into what organisms even put in there. I thought, I don't know what they're going to do. Usually by this time they'd already have decided what they're going to put in the fall vaccine, and they put the brakes on that. So that's the way it's typically done. So you use either a killed version of the virus, or you use a live attenuated version of the virus. Meaning, rather than kill the virus and inject it in your arm, you knocked it upside the head, so it's a little addled, and then you inject it in somebody's arm. And that would be like measles, mumps, rubella. Those are live viruses. And then the chickenpox virus. Those are live attenuated. So the trouble with those is it is a live virus. So in one so many people, it's going to actually cause disease. You know, they're going to be sensitive to the live virus, even as weak as it is. It's going to cause the disease you're trying to prevent. Oral polio virus is a live virus. Now, in theory, it's got a better working, because you're actually putting it in the digestive system, and that's where the problem starts with polio. They swallow that, and it makes antibodies right there where you're going to be attacked.
Hang on, I think we got a question here real quick. Good morning. Do you have a question or comment for Dr. Ayers this morning?
Yes, sir, Mr. Ron. I do there. He's talking about all these shots and stuff. I've heard different things from different doctors or whatever there, but how often are you supposed to take a tetanus shot, and how often should you take your pneumonia vaccine? And that's pretty simple, I know there, but I was told 1 year on the pneumonia shot, and the first one I got, they said 5 years. So I'll listen to your expertise, and I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Well, it's been a bit since I did that. As far as the tetanus goes, and let me say I've never seen a case of tetanus. We don't really see tetanus much. I mean, the ideal way to get tetanus would be to be in a barn, in manure, and get something sharp go up into your foot. Okay, so it needs like it's anaerobic activity, no oxygen environment, and like cow manure and up in your foot. But every 5 years if you get stuck, every 10 years if you don't get stuck. So if it's been 5 years and you've got a dirty cut like that from being in a barn, you should get it if it's 5 years. If you're just getting them on cue, they would say every 10 years. The pneumonia, they keep changing. So there's 2 pneumonia shots. I think there's a 13-valent and a 23-valent. Meaning valent means that's how many versions of the pneumococcus bacteria it protects against. And so around 50, they want you to get the both of them, maybe a year apart or 6 months apart. I don't remember the exact time, but somewhere around 50. Now, kids get them on the front end, in theory, to prevent ear infections and stuff. I don't think that's really panned out, but I think for adults it's a 50. Maybe I can check before next month, but there are 2 shots. There's a 23-valent and a 13-valent, and they want you to take both of them. So you could ask your pharmacist, because I'm sure they have them there to inject you with. I've had both of those, mostly because I traveled to India, but that's before I knew more about. Because you don't get any education on this in school. You only get education about when to give it.
Sure. Nobody
really tells you the pros and the cons of it. I mean, they're really not at all. Some vaccines. Let's back up. So we got the live attenuated ones, and we have the killed viruses. That's the way vaccines have been since the beginning. I mean, the first vaccine was really giving cowpox to people to try to prevent smallpox, because somebody noticed, Edward Jenner, I suppose, that the milkmaids who had pox on their face from having cowpox didn't get smallpox. So he thought, well, we'll take some of that cowpox and we'll inject it. They put it on a scratch on your arm if you've got a smallpox scar there. And but it never really worked out. In some ways, it made it worse. And yet somehow it's become, there's a halo around it. You can't say anything bad about it. It didn't really work. And yet that's led to all this other stuff. So now, talk about the mRNA. What's different about it? With the mRNA, rather than giving you part of the virus or part of the bacteria, what they're doing is they're giving you a message of, and the M stands for modified. So if you've been through biology in school, when you see mRNA, you think of messenger RNA. But really, this is a modified RNA. And they get an RNA, it's ribonucleic acid, sort of like the forerunner of DNA, and they inject it in your arm. It sends a message to the cells to make the spike protein. So the logical thing would have done if you wanted to make a vaccine to COVID would have been to take some of the spike protein and inject that. And then your body would have made antibodies to it, and it'd have been over. But no, they wanted to be creative, so they taught your cells to make spike protein. So now your body's making the thing that causes the inflammation. And the trouble is, how do you turn it off? And some people, they don't turn it off. Some people 2 years out are still making the spike protein. And the spike protein is what causes all the damage. It causes the vasoconstriction and the blood clotting and all these ill effects that we've seen. I said, now Europe now came up with this new thing. They have approved a self-amplifying COVID mRNA vaccine. So what this does, it it tells the body to make more of itself as well as to make spike protein. So not only is it you inject it, it takes over your cells, and your cells start making spike protein, but also tells the cells to make more of the vaccine itself. Well, then it's never going to quit making it. I mean, it just seems like insanity. But that's the newest thing, and Europe has just approved it. And we'll have to wait and see what happens to people.
Hang on, we got a couple calls here. Good morning. Do you have a question or comment for Dr. Ayers this morning?
Yes, I was wondering about taking allopurinol for too much uric acid for gout.
Sure.
There's ways around taking the allopurinol,
Okay.
and what I could do about it.
All right. You want to hang up and listen?
Yes.
Thank you.
So that's a very old medicine. Classically, you'll see a picture from the 1700s with a sort of chubby man, red face, and has a big bandage tied around his foot. Because gout is a disease of uric acid, and some people don't metabolize it all that well, and it builds up in their blood, especially if they have any kind of kidney conditions. When it builds up, sometimes it can settle, as it were, into a joint. Classically, it's in the big joint at your big toe. It's at the base of your big toe, and that's called podagra. It's extraordinarily painful. I mean, if you breathed on it, the guy would scream. That's how bad it is. They usually can't even put their foot under the bed. Had to stick their foot out, the sheet on top of it. It's unbearable. It's a horrible pain. It can affect other joints. I've seen it in people's hands. I've seen so many uric acid crystals that were popping through the skin on people because they'll just crystallize underneath the skin. So what allopurinol does help you to pee it out, essentially, and not let it build up into your blood. Once you give a certain level, I think it was 9, as I recall, you're going to have a bigger chance of having outbreaks of gout. And every time you get an outbreak of gout, that joint is damaged. You get another outbreak, there's more damage, and it's more damage. And pretty soon, even not having gout attacks, the joint's shot, and you have a painful arthritic joint. It can affect other parts of your body, too, so it's not just a joint issue. Allopurinol is safe. It seems to work well. You need to modify your diet. There are foods called purines, Purines, and the more you eat of those, they're going to get more uric acid. So you should try to minimize that. Make sure you drink plenty of fluids so you can flush out the uric acid. And a lot of people do real well. Xylopram, I think, is the brand name on allopurinol. I think there's probably some newer medicines, since I've sort of about out of medicine, to do it. And for an acute outbreak, uric acid is treated with colchicine, very old medicine. And it can make an attack just disappear. And there's other things you can use to get rid of an attack of gout. Interesting, very interesting disease. It's a metabolic disease, and it can be very disabling.
So we had somebody online, too. If you'll call right back, we'll get you straight on, 865-457-1380. Just call right back. We'll put you directly on.
In the 1980s, the CDC tripled the vaccine schedule. So if people used to get like a DBT, maybe MMR, and polio, that was it. Then it went up there. And you have to listen close, okay? Mm-hmm. So lean your head into the radio. This is going to be a wild story. And I don't know about the verity of it, but it has some semblance of truth about it. Some of these vaccines, when they make them, they use the cells of aborted fetuses, okay? Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons to have a religious exemption. You don't believe in abortion, and you definitely don't want parts of aborted babies injected into your body. One of these cell lines is called WI-38, and it's a cell line from a female aborted fetus. And this child died years and years ago. They just keep the cells growing, sort of freaky weird that way. And now the question is, when you inject, they can't get all the DNA out. So some of the DNA gets injected into the person. This is all theory, I'm telling you. Well, it's not theory yet. The outcome is the theoretical part. So a girl is XY. This was a female aborted fetus. So if you take an XY, some DNA, inject it into a male, the girl's XX, the boy's XY. So if you take XX, 2 female chromosomes, and inject it into the male, And some of those cells, if it gets into it, it's going to be the XY that he had plus 2 more X's. So he's going to have 3 X's and 1 Y. And the question is, does that do anything feminizing to people? I'm sure they're going to say no. I think this theory came up with a guy named Spencer Holmes. But it's interesting because the Y is not really a strong chromosome. I always think of the Y as being like an X, but one of his arms tore off. So if you had an X and you tore one arm off, you'd have a Y, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of weaker. So now we have this onslaught of boys all of a sudden wanting to be girls, who think they should be girls. There's always been some of that going on, but never like it is now. So does this play part of it? I don't know. Now, there's MRC-5, and that's from a male-aborted fetus. So some of the vaccines are like an XY. If you take an XY and you inject it into a girl who's XX, you still have 3 X's and 1 Y. So there's not that many girls. This sex change thing is more of a boy-to-girl thing than it is a girl-to-boy thing.
Okay.
It happens sometimes that way, but it's more by far boys want to be girls. So we've got this feminization of children. So now add to that the amount of soy in our lives, and you look up soy and it's going to say, oh, it doesn't do any of this stuff, but there is no doubt about it. The soy is a phytoestrogen, okay? So if you've got soy lecithin in it or soy oil or soy whatever, it's got feminizing characteristics. And a little bit of it, probably no big deal. But if you ate a lot of it, which is in everything, it might start to add up. Then you take onto that, we have endocrine disruptors in these herbicides, where endocrine disruptors means it affects enzyme called aromatase. And aromatase can turn testosterone into estrogen. That's in the human bodies. All human bodies got it. We have the ability to take testosterone and make it into estrogen. If you take some chemical that can make that even worse, then, because remember, atrazine was the one that got Alex Jones laughed at, but it's true. Berkeley did do a study in 2010, and they took tadpoles and they put atrazine in the water, a fairly low concentration, and the 75% of the boy tadpoles were chemically castrated just by putting it in the water. And 1 out of 10 of them actually became females. They changed their sex completely. Now remember, tadpole's like a salamander, so it's amphibian. It can absorb through its entire skin. So a little bit can go a long way in those creatures. But 1 out of 10 became a female and reproduced. I mean, had eggs, had babies, and the whole kit caboodle. People laughed at that, like, because they called them gay frogs and all that. They weren't gay frogs; they were females. So atrazine does that, and that's used in half of America's corn crop. And EPA used to regulate the amount that got into city water because it's in your city water. It's in your drinking water. And they showed that 1 part in a billion can cause a decreased birth weight in boys if the woman drinks it while she's pregnant. But a lot of cities have 22 parts per billion in their water supplies. EPA decided they're not even going to check anymore. They're just not even going to look. Glyphosate, which is Roundup, it also has some of that capability, but not like the atrazine does. And of course, it's associated with lymphoma. So, I mean, you take all that together and say, well, you got some chromosomal stuff in these kids, plus we feed them a bunch of soy, and then we give them atrazine in their drinking water, and you say, well, maybe there's a reason we have all this interest in sex change. Don't know. Plus, it's a very cultural thing, a very, very online kind of thing, telling you that's okay and it's great and you need to try it, and a lot of regret. Sex change leads to a lot of regret. Last I read, it was about 40% suicide attempts in people that try that. The people would be much better. And Europe's just, I don't know why Europe's leading the way. Europe's about dropped all that kind of interventions and decided they're going to just counsel people. And in the long run, they ended up better. Learning to accept who they are rather than kind of change who they are. Let me see what else we got here.
Okay.
You're going to have to call. I'm going to run out of things to say. Let's talk about Jack the Ripper. I don't know if you saw that. Jack the Ripper has been identified now. We know who he is.
Okay.
Aaron Kosminski. He was one of the people they pulled out of to investigate. I think he was like a barber. But this investigator, and I didn't write his name down, I'm sorry, but he got the shawl from one of the women who was murdered. And then he used modern DNA technology and found the DNA of a male. And then he went through the relatives. So Kosminski's oldest brother's great-great-granddaughter, she offered her DNA to compare, and it showed a match that Aaron Kosminski's DNA was on that shawl of the woman who got killed by Jack the Ripper. So it could have, if he was there, if he touched it. So it's not it's according to the science.
That's kind of how they used, that's the science they used for the guy that committed those murders, or that's been charged with committed the murders, I think in Iowa, at that, it wasn't an apartment, it was like a townhome where he killed 3 or 4 people. And they went through like Ancestry.com, they got stuff out of their garbage and found DNA on a knife sheath, and then traced it back with Ancestry.com to that guy's father, I think. Anyway, but they traced it back to his family, and couldn't have been, unless his family had been there, had to be him, or that's what they're saying anyway. So
it shows you can keep your DNA private as you want, but if your daughter, your son, your father gets theirs checked, you're in there, okay?
Yeah.
They know it's somebody related to that person, and it's probably usually a short list. So I don't recommend getting your DNA checked. I mean, it's a massive invasion of privacy. They sell that data. China's bought up almost all the DNA. And what China wants to do with it? China wants to make weapons that take on people of certain either ethnicities or certain extractions. So if they wanted to kill all people of Northern European descent, they're working on a special germ or a chemical that will isolate them and spare the rest of the people. So you can just shoot this everywhere and just only a certain kind of people die. That's the dream of war these days. So Aaron Kosminski, you can write that down. If that was Jack the Ripper, story's over. PCR, is polymerase chain reaction. That's what they use to diagnose COVID with and a lot of other diseases. Cary Mullis, K-A-R-Y-M-U-L-L-I-S, invented that technique. And he said it should never be used to diagnose a disease because it can take any little thing and make it into a big thing. Because what it does, it doesn't expect to find the whole chain of COVID. If it finds like 2 or 3 pieces of the COVID, it can amplify that and make it look like, it's COVID. So, but that's why they're using it on these chickens with this chicken flu thing. And they're going around to these chicken farms, and if they just find no sick chickens anywhere, but if they use this PCR, they found out maybe there's been a piece of the virus or something like the virus or anything like it, they kill all the chickens. So now the chicken prices are going up. Egg prices are going up if you can find eggs sometimes. Eggs used to be like 43 cents a dozen, and I don't know what they are now, but some stores have trouble keeping them.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. It doesn't make scientific sense anywhere. And I don't know any study anywhere of any time that showed that killing all these chickens stopped the disease. In theory, it wouldn't. So why are they doing it? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. It's just making chickens hard to find and eggs hard to find and driving the prices up even higher. But I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but there has to be some other reason behind it than your health, because it's not what they're looking after. It's some other social thing. In 2006, 2007, Gardasil came out, and Gardasil is the vaccine, as it were, for human papillomavirus. Human papillomavirus, or HPV, it causes warts on your fingers when you're a kid, but also can cause venereal warts in both men and women, and some strains of it, and there are, 20, 30, 40, 50 strains of it, all have numbers, are associated with developing cancer, they say. So it became a big thing in 2006, 2007. If your child got to be 9 years old, it was just girls at first, because girls got cervical cancer. It's what you're trying to prevent. And then they started giving it to the boys, because they figured if the boys didn't get it, then the girls wouldn't get it. So they started giving it to the boys. It just sounds like a marketing scheme, really. But according to the article I read yesterday, today, cervical cancer is up 70% in blacks and 47% in whites. Now, that leads me to the question, does this shot even work? Because almost everybody's got it since 2006. And there's a big court case now in California over it, because it was contaminated with some stuff, and they knew it, and they hid it. And because they typically would have fallen under the Litigious Protection Act from like 83 when Reagan was president, where you can't sue any of these people. But because it was a purposeful defect, it's in court case. And it's not going well for Gardasil, but it doesn't look like it's even working. I read, I don't know, if last year I read a study that says it's yet to be proven that the first case of cervical cancer has been prevented by the use of this shot. It's no evidence that it's done anything.
I think we got a call here.
Okay.
Good morning. Welcome to Ask Your Neighbor. Do you have a question or comment for Dr. Ayers this morning?
Hey, I was going to ask the doctor. By the way, hey, Dr. Ayers.
Hey,
Ron.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, I was going to ask the doctor, who's this good-looking woman sitting out here in the car?
You out there working on cars, Jason?
No, I was just up here getting my Millborn's bakery gift.
I got you.
For being the king. I was going to ask the doctor. I didn't want to butt in there. But anyway, I was wanting to ask the doctor about that Balance of Nature that they advertise on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I'm doing, I'm losing muscle mass. And I need to try to figure out what I can do to keep my muscle mass. And I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you, pal.
Thank you.
Bye.
There's a whole group of supplements out there, like Field of Greens or beets. A lot of people make them into a smoothie kind of thing and drink them in the morning. And I think they probably all have benefit. Because basically they're just vegetables, dried up and powdered, and you're going to drink them. And most people don't eat a lot of beets, and most people don't eat a lot of greens. And so as a supplement to your diet, I think it's good. What effect it's going to have on you, hopefully just improve your general health. I don't know if it's going to put muscles on anybody. But I think for considering the American diet, all those things are probably have some benefit. You need to learn to read labels to the extent of at least saying, I'm not going to eat this. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And remember, there's a whole paragraph on there, don't eat it. And I saw where Steak and Shake is going back to beef tallow starting today, I think.
I saw there's like 5 or 6 restaurants that are going to do that.
And it's healthier, actually.
Yeah.
It got banned because it wasn't healthy and some trans fats and all that other kind of thing. And then that's what McDonald's used to use. And then they quit using it. As far as the modern oils, remember these seed oils are probably not good for your health. And the reason is because of the way they're extracted. They're extracted using like oils and solvents to get the oil out of the seed, and then they try to separate the solvent from the oil, and it's just not healthy that way. If it can be squeezed and get the oil out, like an olive, that's okay. You have a call?
Yep. Good morning. Welcome to Ask Your Neighbor. Do you have a question for Dr. Ayers this morning?
I do. Good morning.
Morning.
I have a question about the PSA. What can make it high once, and then if we go back and it's down normal, does that mean that there's a problem going on, or was it just high because of something else? And I'll hang up. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think she said TSH. So So that's thyroid-stimulating hormone. So a lot of the way hormones in the body work is that you have a gland, it makes a hormone, and then the brain, it checks to see, is the level good? If the level is good, then the thyroid-stimulating hormone, which comes from the hypothalamus part of the brain down to the thyroid gland, tells it to hold where it's at. You're doing good. If the thyroid hormone were low, the brain would perceive that and send a message down to make more. And if it were high, it would send a message down to make less. So if the TSH is elevated, then usually that means your thyroid gland was not putting out enough thyroid hormone. Now, the caveat to that is sometimes they do a total TSH or a total T4 or something like that. Whereas if you're on hormones like a birth control pill or you're taking Premarin or anything like that, that increases the amount of, I think, called thyroid binding globulin, and that can cause numbers to look off. So you need to get like a highly sensitive TSH to be sure about what's going on. But you used to get like total T4s, or if you get a free T4 that's not bound to the hormone or the globulin, then you can rely on that pretty much. But if you're looking at just the thyroid hormone itself and checking that level, then you have to be careful about what hormones you're on. But TSH usually is pretty reliable. If TSH is elevated, then it usually means you're not making enough thyroid hormone. If it goes back to normal on a later check, you're going to think, well, I have to follow that and to see what happens over time. Maybe it's given out and it's lower sometimes and back to normal sometimes. But it's easy enough to do as a blood check.
Okay. Good morning. Welcome to Ask Your Neighbor. Do you have a question or comment for Dr. Ayers today?
Yes.
All right.
I was calling. My dad had his PSA testing, and it was elevated. And when they went back, it was normal. And does that mean that there's a problem in the prostate or not? We didn't know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So PSA stands for prostate-specific antigen. It's a relatively new test. I mean, probably in the last 20 years or so. You'll find out that the year that it came out, if you track prostate cancer, it went way up because they had like this new way to diagnose prostate cancer, and they picked up a lot of prostate cancer. The people who had lived and died never knew that they had. That's the problem with the test, if there's a problem. It picks up cancer that people would have lived and died and never knew that they had. So normal is like less than 4. But actually, a certain number of people at 4 are going to have prostate cancer. What makes it high? Well, if you have prostatitis, like that's an infection or an irritation of the prostate gland, that'll make it go up. And of course, if you have prostate cancer, or if you have BPH, benign prostatic hypertrophy, where the gland just gets bigger, like it does in a lot of older men, it just gets bigger and bigger, well, the PSA is going to go up because there's more gland there. So it just means something needs to be looked at if it's elevated. If it was up and came back down, then maybe the prostate was just irritated, and that's why it was up and came back down. It will just need to be followed. You can combine that with the digital rectal examination. I just quit doing all that. But the trouble is, because once you get data, then you got to do something with it. So now he's had a high, and I guess he's back down to low. You're going to have to check it a third or a fourth time just to see what happens. And I wouldn't check it any more than every 6 months. You know, so you should check it like every few weeks. If there's evidence that it's prostatitis, then you can give an antibiotic and see if you can get settled down and check it again and see if that's made it look better. It just needs to be followed. If it stays up, at some point they're going to want to do an ultrasound, and then they may or may not do a biopsy. And then you're going to have to decide what to do if you find prostate cancer. What are you going to do about it? Because remember, if you biopsy the prostates of every 85-year-old man, I don't know what the number would be, 50%. I think studies done in car wrecks, men who died in their 50s in car wrecks, and they took the prostates out. These are dead men. They took the prostates out and sliced in small pieces. 50% of them had small areas of prostate cancer. So that's the problem with the test. You don't want to pick all those up because most of those would have never done anything. It just smolders, and now it's cancer, but it never does anything. Mm-hmm. So prostate cancer comes in 2 flavors in my experience, bad and not bad. If it's bad, it seems like it's very hard to get a handle on. But there are a lot of things you can do, like hydroxychloroquine that they took for COVID is a great track record with prostate cancer. And then there's the traditional things with excision, it's drastic, radiation, like at the prostate center downtown in Knoxville. There's a lot of things you can do about it, but the question is, we're overdiagnosing it. That's the problem. We're just overdiagnosing it. A lot is the same with mammograms. I saw an article here on mammograms. They recommend you get one every year, start at age 40. Well, I know of no study showed any benefit at age 40. There are some studies that show iffy benefits start at age 50. But if you start, one, radiating breast every year, start at age 40, well, you're going to make things happen, because remember, radiation is not good. Two, you're going to find things. That's the trouble with getting a picture. You're going to see things. And if you see something, you have to address it in medicine. That's just sort of the rule of thumb. So if you get a CAT scan because, you wanted to see whether your leg was healing from your bad fracture, and then he sees a little something off in the muscle to the side, well, then that's going to have to be looked at. That's going to be biopsied, and they're going to have to find out what that is, find some other kind of way to take a picture of it. So one test leads to another test leads to another test. And so getting mammograms starting at age 40, I can guarantee you it leads to a lot of biopsies, a lot of anxiety, because women say, we found a little thing here, we think it's okay, we're just going to put a needle in and do a biopsy, do a needle, it's okay. But in the meantime, in those weeks between the picture and the procedure, people were just thinking they were going to die, they had breast cancer, their life was going to be over, and then they got to get poked, and sometimes they want to cut it out, and then they got a scar on the breast. That's the trouble with tests. For every good thing they do a few bad things, and you have to just weigh in the balance what your risk is and what risk you're willing to accept.
All right, let's see here. Good morning. Welcome to Ask Your Neighbor. Do you have a question or comment for Dr. Ayers this morning?
Yes, please, if you can understand me.
All right.
I wanted to ask him what his thoughts were on methylene blue as far as treating autism, or the NTHFR gene, if that's something. We've got a 4-year-old that lost his words, is the way I described it, when he was 9 months old. And he had just had a vaccine. They were spacing his vaccines out because of a heart problem. So he received his first year shots, first round, and finally his mom stopped. And now he's 4. He got words. He'll put a few words together and make some sentences occasionally. He saw a developmental pediatrician. Apparently there's only one in the whole area around here at Children's. And she said he's severely developmentally delayed with a good chance of autism. So I know this methylene blue, they're apparently having luck with using it for autism.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to get all the information together I can. So if he has any thoughts on that, or the MTHFR gene, if, like, maybe he didn't get enough folic acid and he should be checked for that gene mutation, or just any, I'm digging, just anything. I'd appreciate it.
All right, ma'am. Thank you.
And I'll hang up.
All right, thank you.
Methylene blue is a dye. If you notice, Kennedy's using it in his water when he drinks. I don't know a lot about its use in medicine. We used it to treat aniline dye toxicity. I think it comes to my mind. In Huntington, there was a factory that made aniline dyes. And the guys looked like Smurfs when they came out, really. They had that powder all over them. And goodness knows they were breathing in. But if you get aniline dye toxicity, it's weird. The way you treat it is you inject a dye, methylene blue, in IV. It's this bright blue. It's like ink. And it fixes them. So that's sort of limited, like I said, other than when I saw that Robert Kennedy was using in his water the other day. I tell you what, this MTHFR gene, I had some experience with that. I think I'm going to ask the wife, who's surely listening at this point, unless she's talking to Jason, that on the Facebook page, Dr. David Ayers, I'm going to have her post about autism and, whether we found that to be effective, because I think she's got a whole thing. She's an RN. So we'll post an article there. I think it'd be better than me trying to make stuff up off the top of my head about what might work. Because I do know there are people that have successfully dealt with autism in their family, particularly after an injection. And I can almost guarantee your specialist you saw will not say that the shot was what caused it. Though there's so many stories out there where a kid was totally normal, meeting all those milestones, got a shot, had autism or major developmental delay after that. That is a very common story. I saw triplets, all three of them, they just stare into space. They were totally normal up till they got the shot. Now they just sit and stare in space. That's more common than you might think. So look on that. Well, give me a few hours, but Dr. David Ayers on Facebook, and I'll see if I can post something there to answer your questions better.
Okay.
Pentagon. You know what the Pentagon is? You may not know that it was made as a hospital after World War II, I believe.
No,
maybe World War I. It had ramps going up, so it's made like you can push a gurney up, constantly go around the thing. Then it became this military thing. They're retrofitting everything with artificial intelligence, made by OpenAI and Anthropic AI. And they're having trouble trying to keep it from going rogue. So I saw the other day Facebook, I forget what year this was, but Facebook was developing AI, and the AI started talking with the other AI, and they made up their own language, so they couldn't even tell what it was saying. So they had to shut down the whole machine. Because
they're talking to each other in the language they didn't know?
Yeah, they made up a language like that fast. That's the problem. If you want to know the trouble of the future, it's going to be artificial intelligence. Because A, it's going to be smarter than you, and it's going to know about you already. I mean, you can tell it to read like 5 books, and it'll give you an answer, a summary, like in 10 seconds of all of them. And it can get out of control. And is it going to protect you, or is it going to protect itself? That's going to be a big problem going forward.
Jasper just gave me this. Recently went through acute kidney failure, and GFR was 57, decreased to 50. What can you do to bring kidney function numbers up?
Yeah, well, kidneys can heal a little bit over time. Those aren't horrible numbers. You just know about renal failure below 30. And that's a glomerular filtration rate, GFR. And gets below 10, you're going to be looking at dialysis, okay?
Okay.
So it tends to drop as you get older because kidney function. So I would avoid anything that would insult it. There could be non-steroidals, no ibuprofen, no naproxen, no nothing like that, because that damages the kidneys. And if you can avoid any injuries and let it heal, it may come up or stabilize a little bit. Like I say, with age, it's going to want to drift down some.
What's a normal reading supposed to be?
Healthy? Like 120 maybe, something like that.
All right.
So, in a young person.
Okay.
But, yeah, the trouble is you get arthritis. Like I've got arthritis, and indomethacin is like the worst of all the non-steroidals. And my numbers can get a little bit. Creatinine is the other number you want to check. So, and it calculates that number. If you want to know what it really is, you have to measure that. So you have to collect your pee for 24 hours and measure that. Because what it does is a calculation based on some other numbers. And that's not really what his GFR is. That's a guess at what his GFR is.
Gotcha.
And the difference between 50 and 57, I'm not sure if it's a real difference or not. We'll have to see.
Okay.
All right, let's go to another call. I think I'm about done.
Okay.
Stick a cork in it.
We've had a few calls today. That's good.
Yeah, it's been fun.
We do this on the first Tuesday of every month. Dr. Ayers comes in and tries to answer any questions you have, medical questions. If you, between times, you can reach him on Facebook, or if you can't find him, you can find us, and I'll ask the question for you when he gets back here on the first Monday of next month. We'll be closer to spring, won't we? It will be spring when you get back here next month. I'm ready for that. Ready for the cold weather to leave.
Yes.
All right, Doc. So have a great day. Have a good week. Have a good month. Be careful. So you're in the process of moving your stuff down?
Yes.
Be careful. Enjoy that.
I'm old. I need somebody to move my stuff.
Two guys in a truck. That's what that'll get you done.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Thank you. We'll see you next month. Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to AM 1380 WYSH and Ask Your Neighbor. Make sure you tune in at 10 a.m. each day, Monday through Friday, right here on AM 1380 WYSH and BBB TV 12. Or listen live online at WYSHradio.com. And remember, if you have a question, comment, or problem, call in tomorrow and ask your neighbor. Or email from